We always start a conversation about the way how they use social media, how much time they're spending on social media, and maybe we can start with the story behind the YouTube effect.
Okay.
How it starts and how you come up with the idea to produce that kind of a documentary.
Okay. You want me to use this?
Yeah. It is
Hello?
good?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, thank you, first of all, for coming today. And so the story behind the making of the documentary is twofold. The first is, how many of you use YouTube? And how many of you think that the information that you're getting on YouTube is accurate? How many of you use it primarily for entertainment, to watch? Okay. And how many of you post things to YouTube? Anybody? Okay. So in looking at the social media space, I realized that there was a great deal of coverage of Twitter, of Facebook, TikTok, but no one had really looked at the content that was available on YouTube. Now, the interesting thing about YouTube is that it's owned by Google. The two most visited websites in the world, by far, are Google's #1 and YouTube is #2. So it is the most influential, by far, owned by the same company. And in thinking about, okay, the great thing about it, of course, is that it's free. And how does it maintain its free access? Well, that's because you are being monetized. You as an audience, you as a viewer, are being, the time that you spend on YouTube is how they monetize the platform. So they realize that what keeps people primarily, that's not necessarily each one of you, but the average person on YouTube is watching content that gets an emotional response. The emotional response that keeps people clicking on the next video tends to be something that makes you angry, something that enrages you. And that led, for many years, to growing division among people, propaganda, and radicalization, as you saw in the documentary. And I felt that it was time to look at the platform of YouTube and not just let them get a pass as something that is something other than a social media platform, because it truly is a social media platform. And it turned out that when I approached Alex Winter, who directed it, he felt the exact same way. And he had even deeper knowledge, having directed documentaries about the internet, and he knew many of the YouTube influencers and stars quite well. And it was very important to us to be able to feature people who have been very successful on the platform, and also people like Caleb Kane, who were radicalized and essentially, became neo-Nazis and have come out the other side. And we also wanted to talk about how marginalized peoples, like LGBTQ+, like Natalie Wynn and ContraPoints, were able to find a community and reach a wider audience than they ever would have on any other platform. And I think the important thing to realize is that I'm a filmmaker. I've had very successful films in the course of my career. I've made The Walking Dead. But YouTube, people on YouTube who are influencers make more money than the biggest acting stars in the world. That's how big and important that platform is, and very rarely gets that kind of scrutiny.
In the movie follows the history of YouTube. As you mentioned yesterday, some of the founders of the YouTube are your closest friends. How they react when you tell them that you are interested in making a story about YouTube? Do they have that enthusiasm? I think they were aware that where this movie can go during the process of filming.
Well, when I approached Steve Chen, who's the first person interviewed in the documentary, who is the chief technology officer and co-founder of YouTube, I said, this is not going to be pro-YouTube propaganda. This is going to look at it as objectively as possible, which is, it does a great deal of good, but it also has radicalized people who've then gone on to commit mass murders, like in Christchurch, New Zealand. And, you know, and he said, I understand. He said, when he and his partners created YouTube, as you saw, it was really, essentially, they wanted to post videos and they were thinking they would be a competitor to Hot or Not. You know, their ambitions were never as large as YouTube has since become. And I think that, I can't speak for him. Luckily, we were able to have him speak for himself in the documentary. And we had a screening that he attended because he lives in Taipei in Taiwan. And audience members were able to ask him questions. And he was asked, why did you participate in this? And he said, because I think it's important that the story get out. Mm-hmm. So we're delighted that he feels that way, because there's no way that you can say, oh, this is a pro-YouTube puff piece that is propaganda. Mm-hmm.
Guys, how do you like the movie? What was the thing that inspires you the most?
By me, I like the movie pretty much because it shows the world where and how we can find information, but at the same time it shows how it has a power over us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, that's what we intended. So we feel as filmmakers that we succeed when an audience member says, okay, this is what I learned from it, which is not necessarily to fear the platform, but to be a more informed viewer. Yes. And yeah.
At the same time, we can see how people use the platform just for fun, and we can see the people that actually try to find things that can develop their mind, and by that we see the difference where the same application has the bad benefits and the good benefits, but it all depends on the people.
Yeah.
But maybe the crucial thing is the power of algorithm. Those content creators can exist without that power of the algorithm and monetization that goes behind.
The important thing to think about this, though, is that algorithms are designed by people with a particular goal. So it's not like the algorithm is doing this on its own. It's been programmed to achieve particular results. And in this case, was much worse in the past. And in the past, there was an algorithm that very quickly, even if you weren't looking to be radicalized, even if you weren't clicking on a particular channel that was radical, you very quickly ended up viewing radicalized content. That has changed. But it once again is because that's how your time spent on the platform is what is making it so successful. It is essentially the global town hall. It is where people, regardless of how niche, how diverse their interests are, can find someone who's got a channel that addresses that particular interest. So that's the good thing. The bad thing is that the people who are often making the most money are the people who are spreading propaganda and creating fear. And fear is what drives us apart and creates division and leads to violence. But then, you have Ryan Kanji, the young boy, who's literally, he's making over $20 million a year, he and his family, from essentially unboxing toys. So he is financed by toy companies as well as through his YouTube channel. And when Alex interviewed him, I asked, does he seem to actually be like a normal, well-rounded kid? Alex the director was a child actor, and he actually made a documentary about the dangers of being a child actor. So more than anybody else, Alex is aware of what it's like to be exploited as a child. And he felt that Ryan's family is doing their best not to overexploit him. At the same time, when you are essentially a young child who is financing your family by having a YouTube channel where you're being broadcast many hours a day, that's also not a normal childhood.
In the previous conversation, someone mentioned that sometimes they feel insecure or scary by using some of the platforms, or some of those platforms. Can we talk about the feelings that you have during watching some of the videos that on YouTube or on other networks?
I think it depends on the social media platform, but on different platforms we get different anxieties or just different feelings. It also depends on what we see on that platform. And for example, I think we see a lot of things that are not common true and that even don't make common sense, but we still see them for fun or for whatever other reason. And we just see them, but we get nothing out of it. So it's just for fun, maybe.
Are those videos that you're seeing because you clicked on it, or because it was recommended to you and it just started playing?
Sometimes they're recommended and to get your attention, and you're just I'm gonna scroll to see what comes next. So we just know what comes next.
So that's the thing, is that the recommender algorithm is trying to find the content that will keep you online. So it's a two-way street, which is in part what you choose and watch and don't turn off and move on to something else is training the algorithm to give you more content. And let's say you're watching something simply because you're like, I can't believe I'm seeing this. It thinks that you like it.
Sometimes, if it's something extremely stupid, then I big out of it, but like it can also happen that, for example, some of my friends send me something and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna see it, and if I don't like it, I just don't watch it.
And anyway, so that helps train the algorithm not to give you more content that you're not going to like.
I have like also seen that like sometimes we see that with my friends. For example, we talk about something, and like in 2 hours, we see that like a link pops out like on any social media platform, and we're just like wondering, how is this possible? Like, does it like hear us or?
Yes,
like,
it does.
How? Like, how is that possible?
Well, there are things that are actually against the law in different countries. I mean, I've certainly experienced talking with someone over my cell phone about something, and the next thing I know, if I'm on Facebook or if I'm even doing a search on Google or on YouTube, an ad will come up for the very thing that I was talking with someone about that I didn't even search for, which I have to say is very unnerving. To think that there's no place that you're safe. What else is it listening to? It's why I don't use Siri. I've deactivated Siri because Siri's listening. I do not, you know, a lot of my friends have smart, like an Alexa or a Sonos speaker that uses Alexa. Well, they're listening all the time. It's you know, that's how you can say, that's how when you say, hey Siri or something, it's listening even when you're not saying, hey Siri. And that was really unnerving to me. And when I deactivated all of those, it helped not have those ads pop up as much. But it's not, it is illegal, especially for kids. I don't know what age you are, but this is all illegal.
And I think that's totally true. I have Siri activated on my phone, and like something I have been a bit aware of that happens. I have also an Apple Watch, and like sometimes when I just like speak with someone, somehow Siri gets activated even though I don't activate it myself. So like it just says something like, we misunderstood you, can you say that again? And I'm like, how does it activate itself?
Because it is listening all the time.
Yeah, and like, yeah.
That's the, you know, even if you haven't quote unquote activated it, it is still listening in the background.
But like even if Siri is deactivated, like can it still hear you?
You know, that is, I'm not an expert on this, but I know there is a lot of research going on in this that is saying that the various companies, whether it's Apple or Google, Facebook, are violating the rules governing what they can what they can listen to and how long they can keep it. And that's why, especially in the EU and the UK and the US are further behind in this. They're trying to come up with rules that protect content, users of any kind of content and any kind of web search or social media platform from essentially being used to monetize their search engine. To, you know, there have been a number of studies that have shown that a lot of these companies do not seem to be following the rules protecting viewers and users of technology.
That was my next question. How to be safe on the internet? How we can develop our skills to recognize what is disinformation, what is malinformation, misinformation, or fake news in general?
You know, I wish I had the answer to that. But one of the things that I do is I support an organization called the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. ICIJ. They're the ones that broke the story about the Panama Papers and the corrupt politicians, et cetera, who have offshore bank accounts that are essentially plundering countries' treasuries for their own gain. And I follow those journalists because I generally, not always, I mean, everyone makes a mistake, but I think they're more trustworthy. But it's very, very difficult because, you know, I have found that I have retweeted propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, my followers are often people who have expertise in different fields, and they'll say, do you know that you just tweeted or retweeted propaganda? So at least I'm informed, and then I can say, that was incorrect. And I'm guilty of tweeting propaganda.
Are you checking what you're reading, what you're watching? Are you checking the source of the information that you watch? That you share?
Yes, all the time. I check it because whatever we search, it always pops up with new information about that thing. And the more we search about it, the more it fills us with that information. And we most of the time get filled up with it. And then sometimes the same application doesn't have anything else to give us because we mostly concentrate on that information. And when we want to know more, it suddenly stops where the same application shows a limit that we don't notice it, but it has its own limit. It doesn't always give us the information we want because they know that information we aren't supposed to know or it's risky to know.
You know, with Google, once again, Google owns YouTube, people pay to be higher up in the search results. And as a result of that, you know, you are not necessarily getting the best result. You're getting the result that the person or the company has paid to be the top result. I mean, I'll give you an example of how I learned about piracy on the internet, which I'm a big fan of a football team in the UK called Arsenal. Yay, Arsenal, we finally beat Man City. And for a very long time, the matches were not broadcast in the United States, except on certain channels that if you were staying in a hotel, you didn't get. So there was a very important match a number of years ago. So I went online to see if I could watch it. And the top search result said, you know, live stream Arsenal versus Tottenham Hotspur, which is called the North London Derby. So I click, it has Visa information, so you can put in your credit card number. It looked totally legitimate. And then I thought, wait a minute. At that time, Fox Soccer Channel had the rights. I'm in the United States. This is not a Fox Soccer Channel website. So I got in touch with a friend of mine who worked for Fox Soccer, and I said, I'm about to put my credit card information in this website. Is this some sort of Fox Soccer website? And they said, no, it's a pirate site. And if you put your credit card information in there, they will have it, and you may get, you know, they will possibly fraudulently you know, charge to your credit card. But for a very long time, the credit card companies in the United States were allowing their cards to be used by pirate sites. Legislation changed that. But if I hadn't been able to get in touch with a friend who worked at Fox Soccer, I would have been supporting a pirated website. So that's how prevalent it is. And that, once again, so there are two things. One is, it was the top search result on Google, was a pirate site. And secondly, the credit card companies were in cahoots with them, allowing their credit cards to be used on pirate sites.
We have to be aware about
Yes.
a lot of threats that we have.
Yes, and it's very difficult. How do you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you'd be unlikely to know that that the rights should have been Fox Soccer. So,
It is an era of information, where we have to look around everything just to protect ourselves, and at the same time to be absorb proper information, to have clear mind what the things
yes,
and how the things are.
And I do think that hopefully the EU will design what are called guardrails to protect viewers and to protect truth as opposed to spreading propaganda. And it's very difficult because people say, well, everyone should be able to say what they want. Okay, but if you're spreading lies, if you are, you saw in the documentary the women who were subject to Gamergate, their lives were ruined because people went after them. It's called doxing. I was doxed once. Believe me, it's no fun. I mean, people posted where I lived, and I started getting death threats for something in which I was telling the truth, but I had angered someone who was spreading propaganda. And they activated not only trolls, but real legitimate people to come after me and try to shut me up, which is incredibly frightening.
Guys, if you have a question for Gail, we have 10-15 minutes more. Please.
And you can ask about anything I've done. You don't have to ask about YouTube. If you want to talk about any of the films or TV series I've done, please feel free to ask about those.
Yeah, so I want to ask 3 questions about the the documentary that we just watched. The first one is, are there any follow-up projects or topics related to the documentary that the team is considering exploring?
Well, right now, Alex and I have talked about future projects. It really is going to depend on where we can get financing, because right now, financing is much harder than when we initially made this film, which we started 3 years ago. And we made it entirely during all of the restrictions and lockdowns of the pandemic, which was very challenging. And the second thing that we're doing is we are, the reason I'm here in North Macedonia is because we want to be accessible and to talk about this and to make sure as many people as possible see this film and start thinking about their own use of social media. We also have been invited to a number of different conferences. We were at the Cambridge University in the UK Disinformation Summit, where we met the top researchers on this. You can imagine, it's sort of like going to have an exam and you're not really sure you understand the subject. You think you do, but it's terrifying because we are not experts in disinformation. We made a documentary. We showed it to them and they loved it. And they loved it because they felt it was more accessible than their research, which you kind of need a degree in disinformation to be able to understand a lot of their research. They felt that this was very successful. And now we are also going to be meeting with policymakers in the EU, the UK, and the United States, bringing together people who have excellent ideas not to quote unquote break the internet, but to make it safer, and violence at the US Capitol, which was an attempted coup, was the whole idea that Trump had not lost the election in 2020, so it's called the Great Lie, right? Well, up until a few months ago, all of the postings on YouTube and other social media would say, this is not correct, Trump legitimately lost the election, Biden won. That has been removed. Now, if you go onto most social media and if you go onto YouTube, people are able to say again the great lie and say Trump won the election and that it was a fraud. That to me is incredibly dangerous, because it's clear there were numerous court cases. The people who stormed the Capitol are being sent to jail, but that propaganda's back. So clearly I think that there needs to be much more done, and the only way we can do that is through policy.
So my second question is, how did you decide which content creator and experts to feature in the documentary?
When I approached Alex Winter, the director, I said, look, I am good friends with Steve Chen, the co-founder, and I believe it's important to listen to him. I think it's very important to talk to Susan Wojcicki, who at the time was the CEO, and she's the one who talked Google into buying YouTube. But he is the one who had the relationships with the Smosh Brothers. He had the relationship with Ryan's family, and he really made all of those choices in consultation with me, because he didn't want. We've been criticized for not having too many people. I mean, we are not having enough people, that we should have talked with a lot more. But we felt it was better to have fewer people and be able to understand their perspective, as opposed to just a number of different people saying essentially very much the same thing. So it was Alex.
Okay, and the third one is, how has the documentary been received by audiences, and have there been any noteworthy reactions or discussions as a result?
That's a great question. We felt that the hardest audience was the one at the Cambridge Disinformation Summit, because those are the experts. So we were very happy to find out that they found the documentary worthwhile. And since then, we have screened it at a number of universities. Alex participated in a panel at UC Berkeley, also known as Cal, and the dean of the law school there is one of the world's leading, one of the United States' leading experts on the First Amendment and the Constitution. And the First Amendment is the one that covers free speech. And so there was, and also the head of the computer science department and the AI aspect, Hani Farid, was part of that panel, and they both felt that it was important because it got people talking about the issue. And the important thing is for people to think, to question, to wonder. Audiences, for the most part, have enjoyed it. Some people feel it is too pro YouTube, and that we should have essentially gone in and just, done a documentary that is, these are all the terrible things about YouTube, and really not feature any positive aspects. And there are other people who felt that it was too negative. So we tried, we were happy that some people think it's too pro and some people think it's too negative, because we really wanted to try to show both sides.
Thank you. We have another question.
Okay. Was there any reaction or statement from Google after you first released the movie in the United States?
Well, the good news is, as you may or may not know, Google spends more money lobbying lawmakers and politicians in the United States than any other company. And they could, because of their search engine, they could have buried the search results. If you really, they could have. If you type in stream the YouTube effect, there could have been no results. But so I have to commend them because that's not what happened. There has been really no negative press from them. In fact, a lot of our screenings, people who work at YouTube or used to work at YouTube have basically, come. They generally don't use their names, but they say we think that it's incredibly fair. And Steve Chen, the fact that Steve Chen is happy is the most important thing, and that because one, you don't want to piss off your friends, and secondly, it wasn't just all positive. I don't think he's going to come out and say, I think everything in it is great, but the fact that he has promoted it himself on social media and attended the screening in Taiwan, really means a lot. And interestingly, the film is available for pay-per-view on YouTube. So tell me that isn't ironic. So they agreed to host it on their platform. So that to me, tells me that they're okay with it.
This is only in the US, right?
Right now, if you want to watch the video anywhere in the world, we have our own Vimeo site, and I'm sorry it's not available in Macedonian, but it's available in 13 different languages, subtitled, on our website, which is www.yteffect.com. And so anyone, anywhere in the world can watch it from that website.
We have one more question, yeah.
Question I would like to ask you is what type of advice would you give aspiring documentary filmmakers based on your activity with YouTube Effect?
Having done big films, Terminator, Aliens, Armageddon,
Definitely.
The Walking Dead, and this is my 4th documentary. I think documentaries are the most important. I really do, and I've done them all because they, they can expose things that people aren't aware of, and some of my favorite foreign language films have been documentaries. There was the fascinating documentary from Romania about the scam in the healthcare and the hospitals there. Was fascinating. And Alex, who directed this, also directed a documentary on the Panama Papers. So to me, a lot of people are uninterested in reading anymore, so, a lot of investigative journalism, I read it, I love reading, but the impact of seeing something on screen, whether it's on your phone or, in a theater like this, I think has an even greater impact, especially because you share it as an audience. You're watching it collectively together. So my advice is you don't need a lot of money. You can make a film with your phone. And start with small films. Start with something that you're passionate about. A friend of mine right now is doing a documentary about his 100-year-old grandmother and what the world was like when she was growing up, comparing it to what it's like now. And she has some fascinating stories. And I never would have thought that would be interesting, but it turns out that he's now got financing for it because her story is so interesting. So find something that you're passionate about and just start interviewing people.
Thank you.
One more question. Okay, we have 2 more questions.
Sure,
please.
that's fine, that's fine. We can do 3.
Okay.
The gentleman
over
in blue.
here, yeah, gentleman with the blue shirt.
So, Ms. Gale, back in 2007 or 2008, you have produced The Incredible Hulk. That was, I think, the second installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And now we have like more than 40 movies in series. And how was it like then 15 years ago and right now? What do you think about the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now and their future upcoming projects?
Well, I made 2 Hulk movies. Neither of them were that successful. And I made a Punisher movie too. So I've actually made 3 Marvel Universe stories. And back then, people thought we were crazy. People thought that, you know, no one would be interested in comic book characters. I mean, it's so hilarious that all of the big shots, the people in charge of studios, were wrong. But you know, I persevered, and the other interesting story is so we made the Ang Lee Hulk with Eric Bana, and then when we made the Louis Leterrier Incredible Hulk, the person we actually wanted to cast as the Hulk was Mark Ruffalo. And the head of Marvel at the time said, absolutely not, he's not a big star. And by the way, I think that Edward Norton did a great job, but it is hilarious now that the person who's most identified with the Hulk was our first choice, Mark Ruffalo. You know, back then, we didn't have the same enormous budgets. But I have to say, right now I think, and it's odd coming from me, a big comic book fan, that there are just too many of them. I mean, I think there are just too many superhero movies. But you know, the audience gets to decide. The audience votes by buying tickets and attending the cinema. So, what is it you think?
I personally think I agree with most people. Like, I don't kind of like where Marvel is going right now with their future projects. I think that the good era of Marvel ended like with Infinite War or Endgame, somewhere there.
So anyway, once again, the audience decides.
Yeah.
Not, you know, and that's what speaks to the people who greenlight movies. Is, you know, you have some failures and then they cut back. So make sure that the films that you like, hopefully, are the, you know, hopefully they'll be the successful ones, and there'll be more in those traditions. What's the next question?
Up. The guy with the blue, with the black shirt? Okay.
Yeah, but we can, this is easy.
Okay,
This is,
okay,
let's stick with pink. Let's stick with pink.
Yeah, let's stick with the girl.
And then his will be the last.
I have a question to you from what you said earlier about like getting, when you're a producer, it comes with like a lot of side effects, and like about getting death threats. And you said like it's easy if you go against propaganda that like someone gets your address and like you're threatened, and like how do you get like out of such a situation if you're comfortable?
Sure. So I'm lucky. A lot of times I am on location on a project, so I'm not always home. The people that I worry about are the people who are victims of Gamergate. Right now, Natalie Wynn, because there's so much transgender hate in America and around the world, she can't come out, and we wanted her to be on panels. It's unsafe for her to be on panels. She can't go out in public. I mean, imagine how much your life changes because of, you know, because of hatred, because of division. That's why I do worry about channels on YouTube that are that are spewing hate against a particular religion, a particular, sexual preference, banning books. I mean, the fact that we're back in America and there are school districts that are banning books is just frightening. And they're not books that are publishing lies. They're books that are novels, or they're the truth about something that certain politicized people don't want told. And authors of books are now being targeted. So I really worry about the people who can't afford to move, who can't afford security. I'm lucky. I can move. I can afford security if I need it. But most people can't, and I think that's the danger. And if you live in certain communities, the police won't help you, because the police essentially feel, well, if you want to be transgender, that's a choice. Or if you want to be, or if you're gay, or that it's a choice, and that you can choose to be something else. So there's very little protection for people, not just in America, but in many places throughout the world.
Hello, Ms. Gill. I would like to know some answers. I have 3 questions. The first question is, what is the experience of being a famous Hollywood producer? And what are the pros and cons of that?
Well, the pros are it's a lot easier than when I was struggling and, a bunch of us were sleeping on each other's floors, depending on who had money at the time to be able to pay the rent. So it's a lot nicer when you get paid to be doing something that you love. The good news also is, other than those rare times when I piss off someone on social media, no one recognizes me. I can go anywhere. It's not like people are running after me for my autograph, but I can get my phone calls returned. So if I want to reach someone, even if they don't know my name, I can say, I produced The Terminator, I produced Aliens, I produced The Walking Dead, and generally someone will call me back. So access is better. The problem is that you're always asked, okay, well, what are you doing next? And there are times when you just want to say, well, right now, I just want to enjoy what I've already done and not think about it for a while, because there's enormous pressure to try to continue to have success after success after success, and that's tremendous pressure. I mean, I feel it's kind of like being an athlete. An
Always
athlete,
in shape.
always having, your last game, okay, well, you were okay, but then everyone hates you if you're not, if you don't win the race, or if your team doesn't win, or you missed a penalty. That's kind of what I feel like, but it's nothing like the scrutiny that they have. And in Hollywood, if you've had a failure, people don't they feel it's contagious. So, so if you're successful, everyone wants to be your friend, everyone wants to take a meeting with you. If you've just had a failure, no one does. And what's your third question?
And my third question is, do you have any advice for the people that want to continue in their future and become successful? And I'm sure I speak for many people here, and we all look up to you.
Thank you. What I learned is that there are no shortcuts. People think that, so I was lucky. I was very good academically. I went to one of the top universities in the world. And I knew nothing. I graduated and thought that I knew a lot. I knew nothing. Because learning about something versus doing something are two different things. But I was always humble, and I accepted, once I realized it, that I really didn't know anything and that I had to learn from the bottom up. I never felt that anything was beneath me. So I graduated at the top of my class from Stanford University. One of my first jobs was emptying toilets in motorhomes. Okay? So essentially, that is, you know, and there were people I remember who said they wouldn't do it. They're not in the industry anymore. I said I would do it. I did it well. I did it well so that I got more responsibility the next time. I didn't have to, a lot of people were afraid, okay, well, that's all I'll do the rest of my life. But I was like, you know what? I will volunteer to do whatever needs to be done. I want to be the person that people trust will do it right and not complain. And consequently, I moved up very, very quickly. And to this day, when I'm on set, if there is a piece of litter, a piece of trash on the ground, I'll go pick it up. I don't expect the person whose job it is to have to do that. So stay humble, work incredibly hard, and when you get an opportunity, make sure you're prepared for it. And the other thing I learned is don't lie. Best to say, I don't know, but I'll find out. So no one knows everything. And many times I've been put in a situation where someone has said, well, of course you know the answer to this, and it's very difficult to say, well, actually, no, I don't. But if you admit it, you will, and then say, but I'll find out, people will trust you, because in this business, lies catch up with you very, very quickly. And it is a business, like most businesses, that is based in trust. Is that helpful?
Yes, that's all. Thank you for your time
you.
and answers, Ms. Gill.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gill, for being with us.
Thank you.
It was a great pleasure, a unique opportunity. One more round of applause for
Thank
this
you.
opportunity that we have.
And have I signed this one?
No.
I would love to
Please,
sign it.
Let's